Hey guys, welcome to Sketch-A-Day. I'm Spencer, and today I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to talk about the tools I use, specifically my pens, the Papermate Flair. But before we begin, be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on alerts, come say hi on Instagram, and check out my website, sketchaday.com. There you'll be able to sign up for my newsletter and get this awesome free Super Sketch Tip download PDF with a step-by-step guide and just a collection of things that I've learned over the years. So today we're going to talk about one of my favorite pens, and that is the Papermate Flair. It's this pen right here, right there. And I've been using this pen for over a decade. I started out in design school sketching with pens. In fact, if you want to get really good at drawing, draw with a pen. It's going to force you to be more thoughtful about what you do and learn to work with your mistakes. But specifically, I like this pen for a few reasons, and so let's go over those. So one of the first reasons I like this pen is it just has a really nice flow when it comes to the ink. So let's just put down a couple straight lines here. Okay. And they come out really crisp. The tip of this pen is a felt tip. Well, it's called a felt tip pen. I'm not sure if the tip's actually made of felt, but it does have a nice texture grain, if you will, relief to it. So you get that kind of tactile response on the paper as you're drawing. Really nice. So the other part of the pen that I like is that it plays really nicely with markers. So if I am applying markers, and we have a few different brands here we can try. We have a Motica marker, this Graphmaster, Winsor & Newton, a Copic marker, and we have a Tombow gray marker, and this pen I'm testing out, this Caron gray marker. So let's test these on the inks and see what happens. Just for purposes of comparison, I'm gonna bring back my other sheet of paper here, and I'm gonna throw down 3 lines. So one will be ballpoint pen. Okay, so we've got a nice little area of ballpoint pen stroke. We've got some Sharpie here, and leaving a little bit of space between these lines, and our Papermate Flair. So Flair, Sharpie, and ballpoint. Now I'll do videos on the ballpoint pens I use and Sharpie later and talk a little bit about how I use those, but for now I just want to show you what happens when we apply different markers. So let's start with this Graphmaster marker. I'm going to use the chisel tip and just kind of work it on this marker paper. I'm going to leave that alone for a bit. Let's take this Motica marker. Same thing. Okay, and just so I don't forget, I'm going to label these Graphmaster, Motica. Okay, let's take our Copic marker. Same thing, we'll just kind of work that area. We'll take our Chart Pack Add marker. Okay, so Chart Pack. This is our Copic. And let's see, we have our Tombow as well to test. Looks like it's a little bit dry, but it still does the trick. Okay, so we have our Tombow, and then Winsor & Newton. And then we'll test our Caron. So Winsor & Newton marker right there. Looks like this is colorless blender, so even better. It's just showing how the pure pigment of the marker will affect each of these pens. And here is the Caron water-based marker. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna pop the camera off of my tripod here and just kind of show you guys around. So you'll notice that the Graphmaster, okay, it bleeds a little bit with the ballpoint, bleeds a little bit with the Sharpie, but on the flare, it doesn't bleed. So if you observe this line from the flare, you'll notice that it bleeds with some of these markers, but not all. Seems like the Tombow works well with Sharpie, as well as the ad marker, the chart pack. This is a xylene based marker, the chart pack. So the solvent in the marker is different than a lot of these other ones. I'm not quite sure on the Tombow, I'll have to do some research. The Winsor and Newton, you'll notice most of the alcohol based markers are going to bleed with a ballpoint pen. So I'll talk a bit about that in another video about my ballpoint pens, how I use them and what I love about them and what I don't like. This is one of the things I don't like. The Sharpie also kind of bleeds a little bit. Not a ton, but if you're working on a drawing, applying a lot of marker, you'll want to make sure you apply your Sharpie after. Also, Sharpies have a tendency to bleed over time. So as you let your paper sit, this line would start to bleed, for example, depending on the type of paper you use. But the reason I love the flare is across the board, the line quality remains fairly consistent with all these markers. So the fact that it holds up to all these is a pretty great thing as far as I'm concerned. One of the things I really do love about these pens though is how affordable they are. I can get a box of 12 of these guys for sometimes as cheap as $8, usually around $1 a pen. And as far as pens go, they can cost a lot of money or a little bit of money. And I love drawing with pens, so for me this is a pretty economical choice, especially given how well it works with my markers, and also giving myself the challenge of drawing with a pen that I can't erase. So on price, these are really hard to beat, given the performance as I'm using markers and other media with these pens specifically. So here's a shot of the markers and how they hold up with each of these lines. Again, I will revisit the Sharpie and ballpoint in future videos, but you can see on the flare pen, it does hold up pretty well to each of these marker tests, okay? So that is absolutely one of the best things about this pen, in addition to the price point. Now, as far as longevity goes with the pen, I can't give you a definitive answer. I tend to buy them in boxes of 12, and partly because I am picky about the ink flow and how juicy, if you will, the pen is when I'm drawing with it. So I like to use fresh pens. So at this point, I probably have maybe 100 of these just sitting around, but I go through my pens fairly quickly given how much I draw. So that's something you'll want to evaluate for yourself. But again, given the price point, I think it's a pretty economical and smart choice if you're getting into drawing in the style of an industrial designer or product designer, or even just trying to capture some quick ideas or create illustrations of your own. The ink is also acid-free and archival, so you don't have to worry about it doing funny things over time, which is also really great. It's not permanent or as harsh as a Sharpie as far as the chemicals. There's no odor or smell to the pens, which I do appreciate and like, especially if you're working in a small space like my studio here. I don't have to worry about getting high, if you will, and passing out or something. But I do I would rather if I were using this ad marker. They're pretty noxious in terms of the smell. So that's my quick run through on the Papermate Flare. If you want to try them out, or if you have tried them out, be sure to leave a comment. If you want to try them out, you can check the description in the video. I'll post a link specifically to these pens, and I'll try and find the best deal to post for you guys. So you'll want to use that link. It also helps support what we're doing here at Sketch-A-Day. If you've made it this far, I appreciate your support as well. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on alerts, and come say hi on Instagram, or just find me online wherever I am. Well, thanks for joining me today on Sketch-A-Day, and I hope you learned a little bit about one of my favorite tools, and I hope that you guys go try it out yourselves. And with that, we'll see you next time right here on Sketch-A-Day.